I first sensed something was wrong on a crisp autumn evening at my wife's company celebration. Emily and I arrived at the downtown hotel ballroom arm in arm, smiling for her colleagues. I was proud to be by her side. She's a successful project manager with a sharp mind and a charisma that lights up any room. That night, she looked radiant in a midnight blue dress, the very picture of a loving wife. But as the night wore on, a subtle shift in her demeanor set my nerves on edge. It started innocently, a glass of champagne, an inside joke shared with a coworker named Anthony. I'd met Anthony briefly earlier, tall, confident, maybe a few years older than my 34. He flashed a polite smile and a firm handshake, nothing unusual. But I caught how his eyes lingered a second too long on Emily's figure, how she flushed and laughed at jokes that weren't that funny. A pang of something, jealousy, foreboding, stabbed in my chest. Halfway through the night, I noticed Emily's phone glowing with a text. She glanced at it and quickly tucked it away, smiling to herself. Odd, I thought. When I gently asked if everything was okay, she jumped as if guilty. "Oh yes, it's nothing," she said with a too-quick smile. That was crack number one. Later, after dinner and a round of congratulatory toasts for the team's big project, I realized I hadn't seen Emily in several minutes. I found myself scanning the crowd for her blonde curls. That's when I saw them, tucked in a dim corner down an adjacent hallway. Emily and Anthony stood close together near the coat check, deep in hushed conversation. His hand rested lightly on her lower back, in a way that made my fists clench. Emily looked up at him with an expression I recognized from our early dating days. Shy excitement, flattery. I froze, heart thudding in my ears. They weren't kissing, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Before I could think it through, Anthony brushed a strand of hair from Emily's face. She didn't pull away. In that split second, my world tilted. I felt simultaneously hot with anger and cold with betrayal. Part of me wanted to storm over, demand to know what the hell was going on, but a calmer instinct kicked in. One I didn't know I had. Observe, don't act, yet. If I charged in raging, they'd clam up or lie. I needed clarity. I stepped back behind a pillar, watching unseen. Emily laughed softly at something he whispered. Then, to my dismay, Anthony leaned down and pressed a fleeting kiss to her cheek. It might have been platonic elsewhere, but the way she tilted her face toward him suggested it landed awfully close to her lips. My stomach churned. Emily glanced around nervously right after, on edge, knowing this was wrong. She took a small step back from him, and I saw conflict writ on her face even from a distance. But she didn't slap him, didn't walk away. That was enough for me. The first crack in the facade of our 5-year marriage had just splintered into a fault line. I quietly slipped away before they could notice me. Returning to the ballroom, I forced myself to breathe slowly, to keep my expression neutral. Inside, I was a storm of hurt and fury. I wasn't sure what I'd just witnessed. An affair in bloom, a one-time lapse in judgment at a boozy work party. But the tender look on my wife's face was something I never expected to see directed at another man. Emily found me a few minutes later, hurrying over with slightly disheveled hair and an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I went to powder my nose," she lied easily. Powder her nose? For 10 minutes? I nodded, swallowing the bile of deceit rising in my throat. "No problem," I replied, voice surprisingly steady. "Everything all right?" My eyes searched hers for some hint of guilt. She just kept that practiced smile. If she only knew I'd seen her with him. The band struck up a slow song then, a tune we'd danced to at our wedding. Trying to maintain composure, I offered her my hand. Shall we? Perhaps I needed to feel her in my arms, to pretend for one more dance that nothing had changed. We swayed under the amber lights. Emily's body felt tense against mine, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. My thoughts raced too. With her head on my shoulder, I allowed myself a moment of weakness, inhaling the familiar scent of her perfume, and wishing desperately that my eyes had deceived me. But there was no undoing what I saw. As the song ended, I made a decision. Leaning to her ear, I whispered, "I'm going to step outside for some fresh air, okay?" She pulled back to look at me. "Are you all right, Daniel? You look pale." There was genuine concern in her voice, which almost made me doubt her guilt for a second. "Just a bit lightheaded. Too many stuffy speeches," I forced a chuckle. "I'll be right back." Before she could follow, I squeezed her hand and slipped away. My heart pounded because I was about to do something drastic, leave her there. Outside in the chilly air, I paced, running both hands through my hair. I couldn't confront her here, her co-workers milling around, the risk of an ugly scene. And I sure as hell couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. My mind was made up in that adrenaline-fueled clarity. I would not be her fool. I pulled out my phone and requested a rideshare home. As I waited, I texted one of Emily's close friends from work, Marcy, whom I also knew. "Not feeling well, had to head home. Can you give Em a ride later?" I didn't wait for a reply. It was a cowardly way out of the evening, perhaps, but also a tactical retreat. Let Emily wonder what happened. Let her replay that moment in the hallway and sweat whether I knew. In that uncertainty lay my small advantage. The car arrived. I sank into the back seat and exhaled shakily as the driver pulled away from the hotel. My phone buzzed. Emily calling. I sent it to voicemail. She called twice more before sending a text. "Danny, where are you? Marcy said you left. Are you okay? Please answer." I stared at the messages, my chest aching. The urge to call her and demand answers was strong, but I resisted. Not yet. I needed to get my head on straight first. That night, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, not wanting to see or speak to my wife until I'd sorted through the whirlwind of emotions, lying on the stiff motel mattress. I felt a mix of rage, hurt, and strangely determination. If this was truly what it looked like, if Emily was betraying me with this Anthony, then I wasn't going to go quietly into heartbreak. Staring at the ceiling, I made a silent vow. I will find out the whole truth, and if she's betrayed me, there will be consequences. Outside, the city lights blinked indifferently. I turned off my phone and tried to close my eyes, not knowing that this sleepless night was only the beginning of a much darker journey. I barely slept. By morning, a dull headache throbbed behind my eyes from a toxic brew of exhaustion and anger. I checked my phone gingerly. A barrage of missed calls and texts from Emily awaited, starting with worry and escalating to outright panic. "Daniel, please, I'm really getting scared. Where are you?" "I'm home now. You're not here. Did something happen? If you're angry with me, please, we can talk. Just tell me you're safe. I'm so sorry for whatever's wrong." I tossed the phone aside, not ready to respond. Let her stew a little longer. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say to her yet. Instead, I took a scalding shower in the motel's cramped bathroom, trying to wash away the grime of last night's revelations. But no amount of soap could cleanse the betrayal I felt. By mid-morning, I decided to face the situation head-on. I drove home, heart hammering as I pulled into the driveway of our suburban house. Just 5 years ago, we bought this place and made it our dream home. Now it felt like enemy territory. I stepped inside to find Emily curled on the living room sofa, still in her clothes from the night before, eyes red and swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, she leapt up, relief flooding her features. "Daniel! Oh, thank God!" she cried, rushing over. She stopped short a foot away, unsure if she was welcome to touch me. Her hands wrung together nervously. "I was so worried. Why did you leave? Why didn't you answer?" I closed the door behind me and set my overnight bag down silently. Seeing her like this, distressed, mascara smudged, stirred conflicting feelings. Part of me hated to see her hurting. Another part remembered that tender look on her face for another man and steeled itself. "I think you know why," I said quietly. My voice came out flat, betraying none of the turmoil inside. Her brow furrowed. I don't understand. Was it something at the party? You just vanished, Danny. I was looking everywhere." "I saw you, Emily," I cut in, unable to bear the charade. My eyes locked onto hers. "I saw you with Anthony." Her face went sheet white. Just like that, all pretenses crumbled. "Oh, oh God," she whispered. She looked away, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. In that instant, her guilt was confirmed beyond any doubt. A heavy silence hung between us. I realized I'd been holding my breath and let it out in a rush, the air thick with the smell of last night's champagne and anxiety. "How long?" I asked, surprising myself with the calmness of my tone. "How long have you been involved with him?" I couldn't even bring myself to say the word affair yet. Emily's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't," she struggled, voice hitching. "It's not what you think, I promise. Last night, he kissed me, but it was the first time anything like that ever happened. I swear, Daniel." I arched an eyebrow. "First time? Do you expect me to believe that? You looked pretty comfortable with his hand on you, with sneaking off alone together." My words were sharper than a knife, years of trust bleeding out with each one. She broke into sobs, tears rolling freely now. "I know how it looked, but we never slept together." She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. The slight recoil made her cry harder. "Please listen. Yes, I admit we crossed a line last night, but it was a stupid mistake. I had too much to drink. We were just talking and he kissed me. I didn't invite it. I was just lonely because you weren't around and—" "Don't you dare try to turn this on me," I snarled, the calm facade cracking. I hadn't planned to raise my voice, but the betrayal and her half-baked excuse ignited white-hot anger. "I was at the party with you all night. I left for 5 minutes of air and you— What? Accidentally fell onto his lips?" She flinched at my bitterness. "No, that's not— yes. I was enjoying the attention, okay?" She choked out, wiping her face messily. "I've been feeling, I don't know, unappreciated lately. You've been working so much, and Anthony was just a friend who listened. It got out of hand. But I stopped it, Daniel. I pulled away. You must have seen. I pushed him off right after that kiss." Her words tumbled out in a desperate rush. I thought back. Did she push him away? She had stepped back, but only after the kiss. I hadn't seen her outright reject him, just a surprised pause. Was she rewriting the narrative for my benefit? Probably. Still, the raw anguish on her face gave me pause. Could it possibly be true that this was the first and only time? If so, no, I wasn't going to be gullible. Trust had shattered the moment I saw them. Whether it was the first time or the 50th, the damage was done. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, partly to stop myself from doing something stupid like reaching out to comfort her. Even if it was just that kiss, do you think that makes it all okay? That I should just forget what I saw? I asked icily. You betrayed me, Emily. The woman I love, my wife, let another man put his hands on her. Kiss her. Who knows what else? My voice caught despite my resolve, and I took a steadying breath. Do you have any idea how crushed I feel right now? She stepped forward, this time lightly grasping my forearm. I let her. She was shaking. I'm so sorry, she whispered, gazing up at me through wet lashes. It was a horrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I never meant to hurt you, Danny. When I didn't pull away, she grew more desperate, fingers tightening. I love you. Only you. Please, can we talk about this? Yell at me, punish me, whatever it takes, but don't walk away. I can't lose you. Seeing her so frantic, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. This was the woman I'd planned to grow old with, now practically on her knees begging for forgiveness. Part of me hated her for what she'd done. Another part wanted nothing more than to believe her and make this pain stop. The battle played out in my head in the span of a heartbeat. Sit, I muttered, nodding toward the sofa. We both sat down on opposite ends, turned to face each other like adversaries at a negotiation table. Emily sniffled and wiped her cheeks, attempting to compose herself. I remained stiff, hands clasped tightly. Start from the beginning, I said quietly. No lies. I need the truth. Why him? What were you thinking? And don't give me some line about being drunk. It was more than that. She swallowed hard. It started out innocent, I promise. A few months ago, Anthony and I started working on the same project team. We'd have lunch together sometimes, just talking about work, life. He's divorced. He's been lonely too, and I guess I enjoyed the attention, the way he complimented my ideas. You were so busy with your new contract and coming home late, and She trailed off, seeing my jaw tighten at the mention of my work. I felt neglected, she continued in a small voice. Not that it's your fault. I should have talked to you. But instead, I stupidly enjoyed feeling admired by someone else. It was an ego thing, I realize that now. It made me feel attractive and exciting again, rather than just a boring wife you barely noticed anymore. She grimaced and rushed on. I know that's not true, but at the time I was convincing myself of these things. We'd text occasionally about work stuff that turned into jokes. Honestly, Daniel, until last night, I didn't think I was doing anything terribly wrong. I never planned to cheat. I thought it was just a harmless friendship. Harmless friendship, I repeated bitterly. Meeting in dark hallways for secret kisses sounds pretty harmful to me. She winced. It was one kiss, the first and only. After you left the table, he followed me when I went to find the restroom. He started saying how beautiful I looked, how lucky my husband must be. I was flattered and tipsy. I admit I flirted back some. Her eyes dropped in shame. Then he kissed me. It happened so fast. I was shocked, and then you were gone and I panicked. I studied her face. Was she minimizing? Possibly. But perhaps it truly hadn't progressed to a full-blown affair yet. If I hadn't caught them, would it have escalated? I suspect so. The intention and emotional betrayal were already there. So it wasn't physical before last night? I asked pointedly. No secret meetups, no hotel rooms, nothing. No, nothing like that, she insisted, a flash of earnestness in her tearful eyes. I would never have let it go that far. I was just stupidly enjoying some flirtation. I see now how dangerous it was, How I hurt you." She wiped her nose. "It's over. I swear I will never speak to him again. I'll even quit my job if you want. Transfer to another department. Anything to fix this." Her pledges poured out, and for the first time I saw beyond my anger into her fear. She truly was terrified of losing me. Whether out of love or guilt or fear of consequences, maybe all three, it didn't matter. She was offering to blow up her career just to show remorse. A week ago, I'd have been moved by such a gesture. But now, my heart felt like it was encased in steel. Still, something in me relented slightly. If this was salvageable at all, it would require ground rules. "I'm going to need some time," I said slowly. "You broke my trust, Emily. That doesn't just snap back because you're sorry." She nodded vigorously. "Of course. I'll do whatever it takes. If you want me to sleep in the guest room for a while, I will. If you want me to cut off all my hair, I don't want you to mutilate yourself," I interrupted, frowning. Her desperation was spiraling, and it unsettled me. I need honesty, and I need to see real commitment to earning back trust. "You say you'll quit your job?" "If that's what you need. He works there, so—" "Yes," she affirmed, biting her lip. "I could find another job, or maybe transfer within the company to a different office. There are options. I'll start looking today." The career she'd built meant a lot to her. Quitting would be a huge sacrifice. If she was willing to do that, maybe she truly wanted to atone. The cynical part of me whispered, "Or maybe she's just trying to preempt you from telling her boss about the affair." I pushed that thought aside for now. "All right," I said after a long pause. "Here's what's going to happen. We are going to take this one day at a time. For now, I won't make any final decisions." Her shoulders slumped in relief. I held up a finger. "But I'm not promising a damned thing either. Understand? We're on probation. Our marriage is on probation." "Yes, I understand," she whispered. "We'll sleep in separate rooms for a bit. I need space to think. You will cease all contact with Anthony. Absolutely none, effective immediately. If you have any personal communications from him, you delete them and block him. If you have to interact for work before you resign or transfer, you inform me every time." I surprised myself at how quickly I was laying down terms, almost as if I had prepared them. In truth, I had spent the sleepless night contemplating various scenarios, from walking out for good to hearing her out. Now that I'd chosen a path, I felt a grim sense of control. "I agree. He'll think I disappeared off the face of the earth," Emily replied quickly. "I'll even write a letter of resignation today and hand it in Monday. I'd rather start fresh somewhere else than give you any reason to worry." Her willingness to uproot so fast was either deeply repentant or downright panicked. Either way, I'd take it. "We are also going to couples counseling," I added. "Non-negotiable. If there's any hope, we need a professional to dig through this mess." Emily wiped her eyes and managed a tiny, hopeful smile. "I already looked one up. When I couldn't reach you last night, I thought I might have ruined everything. I was ready to do whatever it took if you came back. I found a counseling service through my healthcare. I'll call first thing Monday and book the earliest appointment." I nodded. Part of me was darkly amused that she had all these plans before I even returned. She must have been frantic. Good. She should be. Silence fell again. I realized I hadn't moved from my seat's edge this whole time. My muscles ached with tension. Emily looked like she might reach for my hand, but thought better of it and simply said, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll prove that I can be the wife you deserve." I didn't respond to that. In my mind, I wasn't giving anything yet, just postponing judgment. Frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew that I wasn't ready to throw away 5 years without at least thinking it through carefully. And maybe, just maybe, a small sliver of my heart hoped she was telling the truth about this being a one-time slip. If there was a chance to rebuild, shouldn't we try? Yet as I watched Emily quietly collect herself and head upstairs to shower and change, a gnawing unease settled in my gut. She'd offered all the right things: apologies, contrition, willingness to sacrifice. But trust, once shattered, doesn't mend neatly. A voice in my mind whispered that something still didn't add up. Her story felt too tidy. If she'd truly been mesmerized by this guy's attention for months, as she admitted, was it realistic that nothing else had happened? Could I believe that they hadn't at least shared a stolen kiss before or met for a too intimate coffee here and there? As the front door closed behind her, she was heading out to pick up groceries, eager to show normalcy and care by cooking dinner later. I allowed my expression to harden. I needed verification. I needed to be sure that she wasn't still hiding anything. And if she was, our probation would turn into something far more final and unforgiving. I took a deep breath and realized my hands were trembling. On the coffee table lay her phone. She'd forgotten it in the emotional whirlwind. A year ago, I wouldn't have dreamed of snooping through her personal device, but trust was a luxury I no longer had. I grabbed it, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and adrenaline. Her phone was locked, of course, but I knew the passcode. We'd always shared those little details casually. My thumb hesitated above the screen. Am I really going to do this? I asked myself. Then I thought of Anthony's hand on her back, her soft laugh meant for him, and any guilt evaporated. I unlocked it and went straight to her messages. A thread with Anthony was pinned near the top. She hadn't even bothered to hide it under a fake name. Or maybe she truly had nothing to hide until last night. With a deep breath, I opened the chat. Most of it was mundane work-related banter, at least at first glance. Scrolling up, I saw messages about project deadlines, meeting times, then occasional jokes, a couple of memes, innocuous enough. But as I scrolled further back in time, my eyes caught certain emojis, smileys, winks, a heart react to something he said. My jaw clenched. They were few and far between, but they were there. 2 weeks ago, can't believe we pulled that presentation off. You were amazing today. Team effort. But thanks. Drinks on me soon to celebrate? Haha, only if I get to pick the place. No dive bars. She hadn't mentioned that little plan to me. In fact, 2 weeks ago she did have a work happy hour, now that I recall. I had worked late that evening. She'd come home bubbly and a bit flushed, saying she had a good time with some colleagues. She didn't specifically say Anthony, but it was him, clearly. My stomach twisted as I continued. That joke you made in the meeting. I'm still cracking up. LOL, I was worried I'd get in trouble for that. Never. You brighten my day, Em. Aw, you're too kind. It's true. You've been a breath of fresh air these last few months. I really enjoy spending time with you. I do too. You're a great friend. If we weren't each tied up with work, I'd say we should sneak out early more often. Haha, behave yourself. Trying. Can't make promises, though. I set the phone down, feeling sick. The flirtation was blatant in retrospect. She might not have been meeting him in secret besides that happy hour, though who knows. But emotionally, she was definitely having an affair. Maybe she truly hadn't slept with him yet. I was inclined to believe that now, seeing how cautious their messages were. But it was headed there inevitably. Another few weeks or a few more drinks, and I'd be none the wiser. or I'd have found out when it was too late to salvage any dignity. A cold clarity settled over me as I realized I had just narrowly caught this before it went fully physical. Another week, and maybe she'd have been in a hotel bed with him. The thought made my vision red for a moment. I had to sit and breathe deeply to calm down. She said she was committed to cutting him off now. Fine. But could I ever be sure? Would I worry every time she left my sight that she'd find another breath of fresh air to lean on whenever I wasn't doting on her enough? The idea of living like that, constantly policing my wife's affections, was intolerable. No. If I were to stay with her, I needed absolute assurance this would never happen again. But how do you assure human behavior? You can't, not fully. You can only reduce the opportunities and hope, or you can decide to take matters into your own hands and ensure the consequences are so dire that she'd never dare, and others would learn too. The darkness of that last thought startled me for a second, but it also felt strangely empowering. I suddenly saw a path forward where I wasn't just the wounded, pleading husband, hoping his wife wouldn't stray again. Instead, I could be the one in control, orchestrating outcomes. I didn't fully form a plan then, but seeds were planted. Seeds of suspicion, of caution, and yes, of revenge if it came to that. Right now, I'd play the part of the forgiving, understanding partner going to therapy, working it out. But I would also be watching, preparing. If Emily truly made good on her promises, quit her job, went to counseling, and genuinely earned back my trust, maybe we'd survive this, maybe. Yet, if she faltered even once, if I caught a whiff that she was still hiding truths or, God forbid, contacting him again out of my sight, then hell would rain down, non-violent but merciless. I would make sure that neither she nor Anthony would get away unscathed. They would lose everything, as I had nearly lost what mattered most to me. Standing alone in the living room of our once happy home, I made a silent promise to myself. I'll give her this one chance, but I won't be made a fool twice. If she betrays me again, I'll destroy the both of them, legally, financially, socially, utterly, and completely. As I locked her phone and placed it back on the table exactly as it was, I felt an eerie calm wash over me. The worst had happened. I'd discovered my wife's disloyalty. Now I was in uncharted waters, but at least I wasn't drowning. I had a direction: observe, gather evidence, be ready. When Emily returned with groceries, I greeted her quietly and even helped her unload the bags, acting subdued but cooperative. She chattered nervously about mundane things, likely grateful I wasn't screaming or leaving. I nodded at appropriate moments, giving half smiles. Inside, I was already miles away, strategizing. Step 1 had been hearing her out. Step 2, professional advice. I needed to know where I legally stood, should the nuclear option become necessary. And for that, I would need a good lawyer. Better to have one and not need it than the other way around. I also realized I needed someone to talk to, someone on my side who knew me and could provide clear-headed feedback. My younger brother Ethan came to mind. We weren't extremely close, but he'd gone through a nasty breakup a couple years back and found out his ex had cheated. Ethan had become a bit jaded, but was doing well now. Perhaps he would understand. That evening, after a strained dinner, which Emily spent trying to please me with my favorite pasta that tasted like ashes in my mouth, I excused myself to get some air. She didn't protest. In fact, she looked relieved I was taking time to myself, instead of silently stewing in the same room. I drove to the far side of town and parked in an empty lot, then dialed Ethan. He answered on the third ring. "Hey bro, this is a surprise," he said cheerfully. I rarely called him on Saturday nights. He was probably expecting I was out with Emily on a date or something. "Do you have a minute?" I asked, my voice tight. Just hearing a friendly voice made me realize how tense I'd been holding myself. I could really use someone to talk to. Something in my tone must have alerted him. He immediately responded, "Of course. What's up, Dan? You okay?" I spent the next hour sitting in my car, telling Ethan everything. At some point, I started crying silently, the tears finally escaping in the safety of anonymity that the dark night and phone connection provided. Ethan was enraged on my behalf, which perversely comforted me, someone validating that my anger was justified. He offered to come over and beat that jerk's ass for me, which I declined with a sad chuckle. But he had practical advice too. Get a lawyer, even if I wasn't sure about divorcing. Protect myself. And don't trust a damn word of what they say without verification. People who cheat are usually also lying about the extent. Trust me, he said grimly. My ex admitted to one fling, but later I found out about 3 others. My stomach dropped. I truly hoped Emily wasn't that kind of serial cheater. My gut said no. It was likely this one emotional affair scenario, but I couldn't be sure. By the time I hung up, I had asked Ethan for a referral to a tough divorce attorney he knew. He gladly texted me the contact information. I told him I hoped I wouldn't need it, but better safe than sorry. I drove back home, feeling a weight lifted now that someone in my family knew and had my back. The house was dark except for the living room lamp. Emily had gone to bed, the guest bed presumably, since our bedroom door was open and hers was shut. Good. I collapsed onto the couch, drained. Today had felt like a week. Yet, despite the emotional roller coaster, I felt oddly resolute. I had survived day 1. I had confronted her, laid down boundaries, and formulated a backup plan if things went south. It wasn't exactly a victory, but it wasn't a total loss either. Before heading to sleep, I took out my phone and composed an email to Harper and West, the law firm Ethan recommended. I briefly explained I was seeking a consultation regarding a potential divorce and some questions about infidelity and asset protection. I didn't send it just yet. Maybe I'd delete it in the morning if I felt differently. But writing it felt like setting up a lifeboat. I saved the draft and sighed deeply. My eyes fell on our wedding photo on the bookshelf. Emily and I beaming on that sunny day, utterly unaware of what lay ahead. My stomach tightened with renewed hurt. "Do I even know you anymore, Em?" I whispered into the empty room. Her remorse seemed real, and part of me still loved her so damn much, despite everything. But another part, a darker part that had awakened, was prepared for war if necessary. I turned off the light and headed to the spare bedroom, leaving the smiling ghosts of our past in the darkness behind me. The next few weeks were a masterclass in strained civility. Emily and I existed in a careful equilibrium of politeness and guarded distance, as if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile peace. True to her word, she resigned from her job within the week. I have to admit, I was surprised when she handed me a copy of her resignation letter to the company's HR, citing a desire to pursue other opportunities. She'd even CC'd me on the email when she sent it off. It was both reassuring and sad. She was giving up a career she loved, all to convince me of her commitment. She started seeing a therapist individually. The earliest couples counseling slot for both of us together was a month out. But she didn't wait to work on herself. Every Wednesday and Saturday morning, she'd drive to a counseling office downtown. After each session, she'd come home looking emotionally wrung out, but would give me a hopeful little smile, as if expecting a gold star for effort. I'd nod, say, "Good, I'm glad," and little else. I wasn't ready to share feelings or encouragement yet. Frankly, I barely knew how to act around her. Some days I woke up filled with tentative optimism. Maybe we could rebuild. Maybe her efforts would eventually make me feel secure again. Other days I was a cold lump of bitterness, replaying that hallway scene in my mind until I worked myself into a quiet rage. On those days, I barely spoke to her beyond necessities. Through it all, Emily remained patient, remorseful, walking on eggshells around me. She cooked my favorite meals, even when I had little appetite. She gave me space without vanishing. I'd find her reading quietly in the living room when I came home, like she wanted to be available if I needed her, but not in my face. It was as if she'd read a manual titled, "How to Care for a Spouse You've Betrayed." In some ways, her perfect contrition began to irritate me. A small, mean part of me almost wanted her to slip up so I could justifiably unleash the full measure of my hurt. But she didn't. She was being the model reformed wife. Except, trust doesn't follow neat checklists. No matter how good she was, every time her phone buzzed or she stepped out to run an errand, that ugly voice in my head whispered, "What if she's contacting him? What if they have a secret email account?" To her credit, she tried to reassure me in every way. She voluntarily showed me her phone often, saying, "Do you want to check? I don't mind." I usually declined, if only because I'd already installed a little monitoring program on it. I justified the intrusion with the mantra trust, but verify. Though honestly, trust was still non-existent. The program logged her texts and calls to a cloud account I could check. Thus far, nothing suspicious had come up. Anthony's number remained blocked, and no new hidden apps or strange contacts appeared. She also gave me access to her email accounts. I periodically skimmed her messages, feeling like a creep but also needing to know. Again, nothing telling. Mostly job search replies, notes from her mother, receipts from online orders. If she was hiding something, I couldn't find it. It seemed she truly had cut him off. Meanwhile, I had my own appointments, one with the divorce attorney and one with a private investigator. The lawyer, Miss Sandra Holt, was a brisk, sharp-eyed woman who didn't waste time on sympathy. After I laid out the situation, she gave me a rundown of where I stood. We live in a no-fault divorce state, meaning I couldn't financially punish Emily for adultery in the divorce per se. However, evidence of infidelity could help in settlement negotiations to get leverage, especially if it involved marital assets being spent on the affair. Thankfully, or unfortunately, I hadn't seen evidence of that. No suspicious hotel charges or gifts, since it hadn't progressed far. She also suggested I discreetly document everything, just in case. "Better to have more evidence than you need, Mr. Kincaid," she said crisply. I got the impression she'd seen some ugly turnarounds in her time. Cheaters suddenly making false counter-accusations or hiding money. That thought sent a chill through me. Could Emily possibly try to flip the script on me if I filed for divorce? Claim I abused her or something to get a better deal? It seemed absurd given her current submissive guilt, but people can become unpredictable when cornered. Miss Holt seemed to read my mind. "I'm not saying she will, but I've seen cases where the guilty party plays victim when they realize what they stand to lose." "What should I do to protect myself?" I asked. She gave me a tight smile. "Gather evidence and secure important documents. If you have joint accounts, keep an eye on balances or consider moving half into a separate account for now. Also, if there's any indication her affair partner is married, that can be leveraged too. Some states allow alienation of affection suits, though it's rare and mostly a bargaining chip." I left that meeting both reassured and sobered. I hadn't fully committed to divorce, but I felt like I had an umbrella stored away in case of a storm. The private investigator, Ron Mills, was a gruff ex-cop who specialized in marital cases. Hiring him felt like overkill given Emily's current behavior, but I wanted a third-party verification of her claims. I asked him to discreetly follow her on a few of her outings, especially those therapy appointments, to ensure she was indeed going where she said. It felt dirty, as if I was betraying her privacy. But then again, she had betrayed me first. I needed to know if her honesty was genuine now. Ron's reports came back uneventful. She drove to the therapist, spent an hour there, then drove home. No detours, no secret meetups. Once she stopped by a cafe afterward and was alone, writing in a journal. I even had him check on Anthony, purely out of spiteful curiosity. According to Ron, Anthony had been keeping a low profile at work since Emily's sudden resignation. He wasn't seen contacting her and was in fact spotted at a restaurant with another woman a week later. That incensed me irrationally. Emily was tearing herself apart with guilt while that bastard moved on to a new flirtation without consequences. It made my blood boil. "He seems like your run-of-the-mill office Lothario," Ron commented in his report. "Charming until there's trouble, then moves to the next conquest. You might consider quietly sending word to his higher-ups about why one of their valued employees, your wife, quit. Companies don't always like liability risks like an inter-office affair." That was a thought. I didn't act on it, not yet, but I filed it away as one more way to potentially upend Anthony's life if needed. I was accumulating quite the list of vengeful ideas, each one a promise to myself that I wouldn't be powerless again. Meanwhile, outwardly, I tried to maintain a neutral, if not improving demeanor with Emily. By the third week, I agreed to sit down with her one evening and talk, really talk about us. She was overjoyed, eagerly joining me on the back patio with 2 cups of coffee. It was a crisp evening, and we sat on opposite ends of the bench, angled toward each other. "I know I have no right to ask," she said softly, cradling her mug. "But how are you feeling about us now? Any better than before?" Her eyes were hopeful, yet apprehensive. I sipped coffee to buy time. "I'm less angry than I was that first week," I admitted. That was true. My initial visceral rage had cooled into a more calculating wariness, but I'm still hurt. I still get images in my head that I wish I could erase. She looked down. "I'm so sorry. I wish I could erase them for you too. I wish I could go back in time and slap myself before I ever put you through this." Her voice cracked. "I was an idiot, Daniel. The stupidest woman on earth." I studied her. She had lost a bit of weight, her cheeks not as full as before, and dark circles lingered under her eyes. She was punishing herself in her own way. "Why did it happen?" I asked, the question that had plagued me. "I mean, really why? You gave me the work stress and feeling neglected reasoning, but there are a million women who feel that and don't cheat. So why you?" She swallowed hard, thinking. "I've asked myself that 1,000 times in therapy," she began. "The easiest answer is that I was unhappy with myself. I was turning 35 and I felt like my life was on autopilot. Great job, great husband, nice home. It was everything I thought I wanted. But I started feeling restless. And instead of addressing that the healthy way, I craved excitement. Anthony's attention gave me this rush, made me feel like I was daring and youthful." She grimaced. "It's pathetic, honestly. Like I was going through a 1/3 life crisis or something." I appreciated the honesty, as ugly as it was. "So it wasn't really about him," I said. "It was about you." She nodded slowly. Yes, he was just there, feeding my ego at a vulnerable time. If it hadn't been him, maybe it could have been some other flirty guy who paid attention. That's what scares me now, and why I'm continuing therapy, even if you ultimately can't forgive me. I realized I have to fix whatever is broken in me that made me risk everything for nothing. A tear slid down her cheek. I love you so much, Dan. You are everything to me. And I nearly blew it for cheap thrills. There's something really wrong with that, and I'm working to understand and change it. Despite myself, I felt a pang of sympathy. I still loved her too, more than I cared to admit aloud yet. Love doesn't evaporate instantly with betrayal. It curdles and turns into 1,000 conflicting emotions. But hearing her speak with what seemed like genuine insight and regret, it gave me a glimmer of hope that maybe this could be a turning point for us. Maybe a year from now, we'd look back on this as a terrible low that we overcame together. I reached out and gently took her hand, the first time I'd initiated contact in weeks. Thank you for telling me that. I know it probably wasn't easy to face. I want to believe we can get through this, Em. Her eyes lit up in cautious happiness as she squeezed my hand. We can. I know we can. I'll never take you for granted again. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if I have to. We sat there holding hands for a while, saying little, just absorbing the moment. I could feel the tightness in my chest loosen slightly. For the first time since the nightmare began, I thought maybe I could let my guard down just a little. Then fate, as it often does, decided to throw a test in our path. It was a Friday afternoon toward the end of that month when I got a phone call at work from an unknown number. I stepped out of the construction site I was supervising. I own a contracting business, and answered, thinking it might be a client. Instead, a hesitant female voice greeted me. Hello, is this Daniel Kincaid? Yes, who's this? This is Julia Turner. I'm not sure how to say this. I'm Anthony Turner's wife. The world shifted under my feet. Anthony's wife? He had a wife? Emily hadn't even known, apparently. He wore no ring and presented as divorced. I gripped the phone tighter. Hello. I didn't know Anthony was married, I managed, heart thudding. A bitter little laugh. Figures. He doesn't exactly advertise that when he's making new lady friends. Her voice wavered. Look, I got your number from one of the employees at their company. I was checking into some things and your wife's name came up. One of Emily's co-workers, Marcy, we talked. She told me enough. My free hand clenched into a fist. Damn it, Marcy. She was a nice person, but apparently too nice. She probably felt guilty and told Julia what happened when asked. Not that I blame her. Julia deserved to know if her husband was cheating. I'm so sorry, I said quietly. I only found out a few weeks ago myself. I had no idea he was still with someone, or I'd have... It's not your fault. Or even really Emily's, Julia sighed. This is on him. I threw him out last week after I found some evidence of other indiscretions. Only then did his work friends spill about what happened with Emily, once she knew we were separated. I guess she thought I should know the full scope of my husband's betrayal. She gave a humorless chuckle. I'm glad your wife woke up and cut it off. It sounds like she did, right? Yes, she did immediately. And she told me everything and has been trying to make amends. I wasn't sure why I was defending Emily. Maybe because I needed Julia to know Emily wasn't some ongoing homewrecker. I'm glad to hear that, Julia said. I actually debated whether to contact you at all. But Marcy said you looked absolutely devastated that night and left abruptly. I figured maybe talking might, I don't know, help somehow. Or at least we could share information. There's an odd kinship in being cheated on by the same affair couple. Her voice dripped with irony and pain. My initial shock melted into a surprising sense of solidarity. Here was another innocent party scorched by the same fire. I appreciate it. Honestly, I have about 1,000 questions for you, Julia. But I also don't want to pry into your personal business. She sighed. I don't mind. It's oddly cathartic. Fire away. Leaning against my truck, I lowered my voice. Did you have any idea at the time about him and Emily? Not specifically her. I knew something was off with him, though. He started going out with coworkers more often, would come home later. The usual signs. When I confronted him, he swore he was just working overtime. Then one night I found a text on his phone that was suggestive. From some other woman, not even your wife. A third one. That blew it open. I kicked him out and he finally admitted to multiple flings over the last year. Never any accountability, though. He acted like it was just flirting or that I drove him to it. She paused, anger lacing her tone. Anyway, I'm divorcing the bastard. Good for you, I said, meaning it. He doesn't deserve a pass. Damn right. I've got a lawyer already and everything. Honestly, one reason I wanted to talk to you was to let you know. If you plan on making him pay in any way, I'd back you, like if you chose to inform his employer about why 2 employees left suddenly. My lawyer said that could bolster my case for alimony and damages if he gets fired due to misconduct. There was a steel in her voice now. Julia was done being the victim. I realized then and there that I was done with passive waiting as well. Emily might be on probation, but Anthony was fair game. He had sailed through this ordeal mostly unscathed so far, while our lives were turned upside down. Not for much longer, if I had any say. I have been considering options, I admitted. In our state, I can't sue him directly for alienation of affection or anything. We're no fault. But exposing him, that I can do. I know HR doesn't look kindly on that behavior, especially if it caused a valued employee to resign. Emily was good at her job. They lost a great worker because of him. Julia agreed emphatically. Exactly. From what I gathered, she left to save her marriage, and he just slid on to the next conquest. He deserves fallout. We spoke a while longer, exchanging any useful information. She mentioned that Anthony had been staying at a motel since she threw him out. He was scrambling because he knew divorce papers were coming. She also told me something that made my blood run cold. Apparently, Anthony had bragged to one of his buddies, who in turn spilled to Julia out of disgust, that he almost had that cute blonde coworker, but her stiff of a husband got in the way. Stiff of a husband. Got in the way. As if I were just an obstacle to his fun. I thanked Julia for telling me that through gritted teeth. It solidified my resolve to crush any remaining smugness out of that man's life. By the time I hung up, a plan had fully formed. I wasn't going to physically harm him. He wasn't worth a single night in jail. But I would rain a legal and professional firestorm down on him. With Julia's cooperation, perhaps we'd hit him from both sides. Her divorce taking his money, and me making sure his reputation and career crumbled. I immediately called Miss Holt, my lawyer, and informed her of these new developments. She was interested to hear about the wife and said that while I had no direct legal claim against him, if his actions had caused financial loss, like Emily's loss of income, and if they violated workplace policy, a well-placed letter to his employer might indeed serve justice. She cautioned me to ensure Emily was okay with being open about it to her former HR, since it could draw her into office gossip or conflict. I was fairly certain Emily would support it. She despised what he represented now. But I would talk to her. That night, I shared everything with Emily: the call from Julia, the fact that Anthony had been cheating on multiple women, and that his poor wife was divorcing him. Emily was aghast and horrified. "He told me he was divorced years ago," she said, eyes wide with anger. "My God, I was such a fool. That poor woman. And those other women." She shook her head. "I feel sick that I even associated with him." I carefully broached the plan of contacting her ex-employer. "It might help Julia's case, and frankly, it's what he deserves. But I'd only do it if you're comfortable. They might want to speak to you about it or ask for a statement." Emily didn't hesitate. "I'll do it. I'll tell HR exactly why I left. They should know what kind of person is representing the company." She managed a thin smile. "I guess I'll briefly unretire from that place just to throw a grenade at his career. It's the least I can do, considering—" She didn't finish, but I knew she meant, "considering I almost left you for that sleaze." She didn't have to say it aloud. Her haunted look said enough. So we proceeded. Together, we drafted an email to the company's HR director that Emily would send. We kept it factual and professional, explained that Emily had resigned due to a personal incident involving harassment by a colleague, naming Anthony, that culminated in inappropriate conduct at a company-sponsored event. We stated that she had initially chosen to leave quietly to avoid scandal, but recent information, his continued pattern of misconduct, compelled her to come forward. We expressed concern for the company culture if such behavior were allowed. It was a strong letter without being overly emotional. I was proud of her as she hit send, a look of righteous determination on her face. The fallout was swift. Within a week, Julia informed me that Anthony had been terminated. Apparently, HR launched an internal investigation, and multiple people came forward about his flirtations and unprofessional behavior over the years. It was enough to can him under the morals and conduct clauses. I won't lie, hearing that news was sweet. I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time in a while. Emily seemed relieved as well. "He can't hurt anyone else there now," she said softly. For her, it was partially atonement, ensuring he didn't just skate free. For me, it was justice served. But I wasn't quite done. One night, a few days after his firing, I decided to tie off the Anthony chapter personally. I learned from Julia, my new unlikely ally if not quite a friend, that he'd been crashing at a buddy's apartment since losing his job, because money was getting tight, and motels cost more than he thought. I knew that buddy. He worked at the same company, and had always been a wingman type. I'd seen him joking with Anthony at the party. He was complicit in covering for him. So I orchestrated a little face-to-face meeting. Nothing violent, just educational. That evening, I told Emily I was going to see my brother for a drink and drove out to Ralph's pub, a spot I knew Anthony's friend group frequented. Sure enough, I spotted Anthony at a back table with two guys drinking beers. He looked a bit rough, unshaven, eyes a touch sunken. Good. I walked straight up to their table. The chatter died down as they noticed me. Anthony's eyes widened in recognition, and a flush crept up his neck. Dan, hey," he blurted, trying for a casual tone that fell flat. His buddies looked confused. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to show. "Anthony," I said with a curt nod. I was oddly calm. "Gentlemen," I added to the others. They gave awkward nods. I could feel a tremor of adrenaline, but I kept my cool. "Mind if I have a quick word?" I asked. eyes on the man who'd tried to steal my wife and lost his own in the process. Privately, his friends looked at him for guidance. Anthony shifted in his seat. I could see a flash of fear, maybe thinking I'd make a scene or throw a punch. That wasn't my plan tonight. "It's fine," he told the others, clearing his throat. "I'll meet you outside in a minute." They hesitated, then got up and shuffled off, casting backward glances. Anthony stood, adjusting his shirt, putting on a front. "Look, if you're here to gloat or something, I've had a hell of a week, man. I don't need more." "I'm not here to gloat," I interrupted quietly. I stepped a little closer, keeping my voice low and even. "I'm here to make sure you understand what happens now. You stay out of our lives. You don't ever contact Emily again, not even to apologize. You don't get to speak her name. In fact, do yourself a favor and disappear from this city. There's nothing left for you here." He bristled, perhaps not expecting me to be so direct. "Or what?" he retorted, but his voice lacked bite. I gave a small shrug. "No threats, just facts. You've lost your job. Your wife is divorcing you. You have a reputation now for being a philandering liar. There's not much else for me to take from you, Anthony. But if you think of something, be assured I will, if you push me." I allowed a hint of steel to creep into that last line. His face reddened. "You think you're so high and mighty?" he hissed, bravado flaring. "Your wife practically threw herself at me. If you'd satisfied her, she wouldn't have come looking for attention from a real man." I felt a spike of rage at that, but I managed to keep a neutral expression. He was trying to bait me. Maybe he wanted me to hit him so he could claim victim. Not falling for it. Instead, I chuckled softly. "A real man, huh? Is that what you call yourself? Real men take responsibility. Real men honor their commitments. You're just a coward who chases validation because something's missing inside you." I stepped even closer, dropping my voice to a whisper only he could hear. "And for what it's worth, Emily deeply regrets ever letting you near her. She came back to me willingly, eagerly, so whatever fantasy you had in your head about stealing her away, that's all it ever was, a fantasy." He glared, jaw tight. I could tell my words hit home, even through his anger. "Screw you," he spat. But it sounded more tired than venomous. I gave him a thin smile. "We're done here. Enjoy your beer, Anthony. It might be your last for a while. Heard money's a bit tight." I couldn't resist the jab. With that, I turned on my heel and walked out into the cool night, heart pounding but triumphant. Outside, I exhaled a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands shook slightly with the adrenaline come down. I half expected him or his buddies to follow me out and escalate, but they didn't. I reached my car and just sat there for a minute, letting the enormity of everything settle. It was over. Anthony was out of our lives for good, and he'd paid for his actions dearly. Julia would see to anything I missed, through her divorce. I almost felt a shred of pity for how completely he'd wrecked his own life. But then I remembered the smug way he said, "real man," and any pity dissolved. He earned his fate. When I arrived home, Emily was waiting in the living room, anxious. I had texted her that I was actually confronting Anthony instead of seeing Ethan, not wanting to lie. She practically leapt up when I walked in. "How did it go?" she asked, scanning me to ensure I wasn't injured. "It's done," I said simply. "I gave him a piece of my mind. No drama." I cracked a wry smile. "I think he's finally gotten the message." She approached cautiously, then reached up and touched my cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. Not everyone would defend someone who hurt them like I hurt you. But you defended me. You stood up for us. Tears glistened in her eyes. I don't deserve it, but I'm so grateful. I realized I felt lighter than I had in ages. The dark cloud of Anthony and the unresolved business had hung over me. Now it was clear skies ahead, at least in that regard. I placed my hand over hers on my cheek. We defended us, I corrected softly. You helped take him down too. It was a team effort, weirdly enough. She gave a teary little laugh and nodded. We stood there in a quiet moment, close. I felt that I'd crossed some threshold. Vengeance had been executed justly, and now the burning anger in me was ebbing. What remained was love, hurt, and hope, swirling together. I gently pulled her into my arms for the first time in a long, long while, and she melted against me, careful and tentative, as if afraid I might change my mind. I held her firmly. It didn't erase what happened, but it felt like the worst was behind us now. As she looked up at me, I mustered a small smile. We're going to be okay, Em, I said quietly. Saying it out loud made it feel more true. It's not going to be easy, but I think we have a real chance. She searched my face as if confirming I meant it, then broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen on her in months. I promise you, I will spend every day earning back your trust. You'll get sick of how devoted I am, she joked lightly, voice thick with emotion. I'll hold you to that, I replied, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the tight band around my heart loosen. There was still healing to do, scars to tend to, but the poison had been purged. We stood there for a long time just holding each other, both a little broken but willing to mend. Despite our reconciliation gaining traction, there was still a final chapter to close out, the legal end of my brief dalliance with divorce preparations. I never filed any papers thanks to Emily's swift change of course, but I had put some measures in place. With things stabilizing, I decided it was time to square those away and ensure we were on solid footing. We attended couples therapy diligently. Session by session, we unpacked resentment, fears, and hopes. It was hard and often painful work, but it paid off. By the time spring rolled around, I felt more secure than I ever expected to so soon after such betrayal. Trust was slowly rebuilding, brick by brick, through transparency and consistency. Emily still checked in with me voluntarily if she went anywhere. Not because I demanded it anymore, but because she knew it eased my mind, and she truly wanted to heal the damage. In early May, about 6 months since that fateful night, I received an email from Miss Holt, my lawyer, just following up on my situation. I realized I never told her that things had improved and that I probably wouldn't be needing her services for a divorce. I scheduled a meeting to formally close out my file. It was a strange feeling walking into her office and telling this pragmatic woman that, actually, my marriage was on the mend. She raised an eyebrow in mild surprise, but then gave a genuine, if professional, smile. I'm happy to hear that, Mr. Kincaid. It's not the usual outcome for the clients I see after infidelity, but it's a welcome change. I wish you and your wife the best. We discussed one remaining matter, the postnuptial agreement. Early on, as a condition of earning back trust, I had, on the lawyer's advice, suggested to Emily that we sign a postnup, essentially an agreement that if she ever cheated again or we divorced due to her infidelity, she would waive claims to certain assets or support. To my slight surprise, Emily agreed without hesitation. Whatever gives you peace of mind, she had said. We drafted a fair but firm document with Miss Holt's help, And Emily even had her own attorney review it, so it was all above board. She signed it willingly. Now, at this meeting, Miss Holt confirmed that the postnup was fully executed and stored. If I ever needed it, God forbid, it was there. But hopefully, it would just gather dust as a relic of a dark time we moved past. As I left the law office, I bumped into someone coming in, the last person I expected to see. Wendy Patterson, a mutual friend of ours, at least back in the day. She looked just as surprised. After a second, she smiled politely. "Oh, hi, Daniel. Funny running into you here." I chuckled. "Likewise, everything okay?" Wendy shrugged. "Yeah, just some estate planning stuff with my parents, nothing serious." She glanced at the door to Holt's firm. "You? I heard through the grapevine that you and Emily had a rough patch." She looked hesitant to pry. I gave a small, genuine smile. "We did, but we worked through it. We're actually doing really well now." It felt good to say that and mean it. Wendy's face lit up. "I am so glad to hear that. Emily is a dear friend, and she was beating herself up. We haven't talked a lot since, but I know she loves you. I'm happy you guys made it." "Thanks," I nodded. We parted ways shortly after, exchanging the typical take care pleasantries. But that brief encounter drove home something important to me. How far we had come. The news had filtered through friends that we almost split, and now we were among the rare ones to reconcile stronger. It made me feel proud of us, oddly. The universe, however, wasn't done with its tests. In late June, I received an unexpected message, a formal invitation to a court hearing. It turned out I was listed as a potential witness in the divorce proceedings of Julia and Anthony Turner. It made sense. Our letter to HR and Emily's experience were part of the mosaic of evidence of his misconduct. Julia's lawyer asked if we would be willing to provide a statement or testify, basically confirming the affair incident and its fallout. I discussed it with Emily. Understandably, she was hesitant to dredge it all up in court. We were trying to move on, but Julia had been instrumental in helping us take him down, and she deserved closure and whatever compensation she sought. After some thought, Emily agreed to write a sworn statement to avoid having to appear in person. I did the same. Our statements were straightforward, just laying out timelines and actions. My observation of the kiss, the resignation due to his behavior, etc. On the day of the hearing, I went in briefly to submit the notarized documents and sat in the gallery out of curiosity and support. Emily chose not to attend, and I didn't blame her. Julia spotted me and gave a grateful nod. Anthony looked downright miserable at the defendant's table, noticeably alone. No family with him, just his lawyer. At one point, he glanced over his shoulder and made eye contact with me. There was no malice there anymore, just a kind of defeated acknowledgement. I almost felt sorry for him in that moment. Almost. The hearing was uneventful. Our evidence was entered, and I left before the final decree. Later, Julia texted me, we'd occasionally been in touch via text on updates, to say she got a favorable settlement and thanked me profusely for our help. I congratulated her and wished her a happier future free of that jerk. She said the same to me and Emily, and with that, the Anthony saga truly ended. Back in my life, summer was bright, literally and metaphorically. Emily got a new job at a smaller firm, a modest pay cut, but she found she enjoyed the less pressured environment and the fresh start with people who knew nothing of her past mistakes. I saw her confidence slowly returning with each successful project she led there, and every evening she came home on time, greeted me with a kiss, and we cooked or did something together. I felt more and more that trusting her wasn't so hard anymore. One balmy August afternoon, we decided to host a low-key barbecue in our backyard with some close friends, something we hadn't done since before all this happened. As we laughed with buddies and I watched Emily chatting happily with Wendy by the grill, I realized how grateful I was that I gave forgiveness a chance. The intense, dark journey we undertook could have easily ended with bitterness and broken pieces, but we had made it through. Toward the end of the evening, I stepped away from the chatter and took a moment to myself, sipping a soda and gazing at the pink streaks of sunset. Emily noticed and quietly came over. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, slipping her hand into mine. I looked at my wife, truly looked at her. This woman who hurt me, healed with me, and fought for me. Her eyes were full of concern and love. It struck me that what we rebuilt was not the naive trust from before, but something perhaps more resilient, forged in fire. "I was just thinking how far we've come," I said softly, "and how I wouldn't trade where we are now for anything, strange as that sounds." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Not strange at all. Me too." We stood there in comfortable silence a moment. Then Emily turned to face me, taking both my hands. "Daniel, I know I've said it 100 times, but I need to say it again. Thank you for giving us another chance. I will never forget what I almost lost, and what you've forgiven." Her voice wavered with emotion. "I love you more than ever, and I will never betray you again. You're stuck with me for life if you'll have me." I felt a lump in my throat. These were the kinds of heartfelt words I'd hear in therapy sessions or in our private talks. But hearing it now in this normal, joyful context, surrounded by friends and life, felt like the closing of a chapter and the start of a new one. "I'll always have you," I murmured, pulling her into an embrace. "And I love you, Emily. We got through hell and back, and we're going to have a damn good life, you hear me?" She nodded against my chest, and I could feel her smile, loud and clear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that for the first time in a long while I was genuinely content. The intense and dark storm had passed, leaving clearer skies and a stronger bond in its wake. We let go of each other as our friends called out for us to join a silly impromptu backyard game. Emily laughed and tugged my hand. "Come on, let's go beat them. Team Kincaid?" "Team Kincaid," I agreed, smiling as I followed her. We ran off to enjoy the rest of the evening, side by side. Some might say I orchestrated a ruthless revenge on the man who nearly wrecked my life, and maybe on the situation that nearly wrecked my marriage. They'd be right. But the greater victory was that I didn't let the darkness consume me in the end. I found a way back to the light, and I didn't do it alone. Hand in hand with my wife, I stepped forward into our future, wiser, warier perhaps, but unbroken. The husband won in more ways than one, and the ghosts of betrayal were finally laid to rest.